Okay guys, we're about to start. Cool, so I'm about to introduce to you guys to Martin and Eric. Both of them are consultants for Occupy, and I have been following their stories and adventures throughout the world, China, Japan, the United States, and all over, where they have experience from the nicest things you can experience in other countries to some other things. So they're here to share with us some of their experiences in the world of fishing. And I do have to say, I really like these two guys, and they have really done great work for the community, and they're some of the funniest speakers I have ever met. So I'll leave you now with Eric and Martin here.
So we want to thank everyone at B-Sides Puerto Rico here for having us. We just think this is really awesome down here. And this is what B-Sides is all about. You know, I've had a lot of people here talk to me about they couldn't afford to come to some of the big fancy expensive conferences in the States, or their companies wouldn't send them and stuff. And this is what a community does. You say, fuck it, we'll start our own, you know? And so that's really cool. And so that's what B-Sides is all about. And so we're super glad to be here.
And these conferences, tight-knit like this, are way better in our experiences than huge DEF cons and those where you get to actually interact with people and, you know, learn about what they're doing and stuff. Way better. So we're, like I said, he said, we're happy to be here.
All right, so today we're going to talk about some advanced phishing tactics. Mainly we're going to talk about going beyond user awareness. And we'll get into what we mean by that just a little bit later. So first of all, you got to have one of these slides that tells who you are. So you can see up here I'm Martin, and I am not a CISSP. I just want to make that clear. My main job is a principal security consultant for Accubot Labs. I do penetration testing, red team, black box, whatever they tell me to do. I also work on the distribution Kali Linux, formerly known as Backtrack, and also have my own security conference in Louisville, Kentucky called DerbyCon.
And hello, I'm Eric Milam, also principal security consultant.
Eric is a CISSP.
Yeah, I'm the CISSP. So you probably want to listen to what Martin says and not what I say, but also principal consultant on the Kali Linux team. A couple projects I've been working on with Emilio Ettercat. Anybody heard of Easy Crads? Put that together, and then me and Martin did S&B Exact. So if you guys heard of that,
No.
yeah. Don't you know who I am?
So, we want to start this out by talking about what is spearfishing. Surprisingly, not everybody knows what spearfishing is. So, basically, there's two different kinds of email attacks out there on the internet. There's a phishing attack, which is where you open up your Gmail and you get an email from some weird address and it says, congratulations. Who in here is related to the Prince of Nigeria? Awesome. So we're cousins. But anyway, what we're saying is that's a phishing attack, right? That's where some dude, I don't want to pick on Nigeria, but some dude in Nigeria went to the coffee shop, he put up an email, and he went to some place like, what's that email place? Constant Contact or something, and he bought 50 million email addresses, and he sent out 1 million, and he's hoping to get one hit, right? So that's phishing. Now, spear phishing is what's known as a targeted attack, right? And so it can be targeted against an individual, which has happened a few times, which I don't find really effective. It can be targeted against an entire organization, or what we think is the most effective is targeted against a specific business unit in an organization. And so basically, this is not random hackers, right? These spear phishing attempts are actual attempts to gain access to your network in some variety of ways. So, there are a lot of victims of spear phishing attacks, and we've highlighted some of the most popular here. Has anybody ever heard of the White House? So, they were actually a victim of a spear phishing attack recently. RSA, who uses an RSA token? Yeah, so do you know RSA was the victim of a spear phishing attack? Epsilon, Facebook, Apple, Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Here's some that aren't as well known. Nitro spear phishing, they targeted 50 chemical and defense companies and got into all of them. Mitsubishi, the Japanese defense contractor. There are countless more that we don't hear about. They are all over the place. The reason that I put this up there is not to make these companies look stupid. The reason that I put this up there is that RSA is a security company, right? They vendor security products. If they cannot secure their own fucking organization, then who can, right? So what I'm trying to say is that anybody can fall victim to these spear phishing attacks.
Alright, so
Oh, sorry.
why do we do spear phishing attacks against ourselves, right? Why should an organization do this type of stuff? Well, you just spend a bunch of money on these blinky light systems, and it makes perfect sense to test them, right? Are they configured properly? Are they really doing what you expect them to do? As we found out in Chris's talk, are there any back doors that exist that someone could just, connect to the port and have root access? So these companies really need to look at what they've got there. Is their budget, being spent in the right places? So as we get through this talk, you'll see all the different steps that this goes through and why testing each level is so important.
So here's some statistics about spear phishing that we like to target. Every good talk's got to have some statistics to back it up. And this was actually a survey done by a reputable company called Proofpoint. And they interviewed 350 companies at the last Microsoft Tech conference. And they interviewed all those companies and they came up with some statistics. So 51% of those companies believe that they had been the victim of a spear phishing attack in the last year, right? 50% of those companies. So that really means 75% because 25% had no idea what the hell even happened, right? So that statistic's been deflated for sure. And then to go on down, 34% of the people that responded in that survey were fairly certain that the spear phishing attack had resulted in some sort of compromise of their network, right? Theft of data, user passwords, whatever the end goal of the spear phishing attack was. So this is where we kind of talk about the anatomy of the attack. And the reason we highlight this is because, like Eric was talking about on that slide with all those devices, you saw the FireEye and the blue code and like all this. I'm sure that somebody's trying to sell you all these devices, or you sell these devices. If you do, I'm sorry. But the thing is that, and I'm not down talking these devices because the devices are good. The problem is usually that they're not implemented correctly, right? Or they're not configured correctly, or somebody sold them to do something that they don't really do. And so the reason we show this anatomy of the attack is this is the step-by-step that we go through on a phishing attack when we're contracted to do that by a client. And what happens here is that we're not just testing users, right? When we send an email attack, it is not to see what user is going to click the link. When we send an email attack, it actually tests every single defense in your network, right? So if you think about it, the email comes into your network and it's got to make it through some type of iron port, email filter, or whatever device you got going on, right? So it's got to make it through that. It's got to make it through the spam filter. Then it's got to get to the user's desktop. It's got to pass the antivirus, the user clicks the link, and then there's some type of shell or some type of reverse connection. That reverse connection has to leave the user's computer. It has to go past an IDS or an IPS or ArcSight or whatever type of monitoring you have, NetFlow, any of that type of stuff has to make it by all of that. And then lastly, if you have a proxy or you do egress filtering or anything like that, it has to make it outside the proxy and the egress filtering. So we've now tested 7 or 8 security points in your network with just one email. And we can tell you at the end of the test what failed and what didn't fail. And so the user test is the smallest part of that. So basically here, we're gathering emails, we're delivering the email, our payload is step 3, and then the most important part of a spear phishing attack is, now that you have a shell, what the hell are you going to do with it, right? Because attackers have a goal. So these phishing attacks have to have a goal, right? What are we trying to get? And then, most importantly, getting the data out of the network. Want that one?
Is that one? It can be. Alright. So, security awareness training is not an effective use of your budget. Like we're saying, we're not saying don't do user training. We're not saying that you shouldn't, set money aside for that. But what we're saying is, the only thing that's ever stopped us in our phishing attack is a technical control. No matter how much training you do, at least somebody's going to click the link. If we have a list of 10,000 users, the numbers are in our favor. Someone's going to click something somewhere. Someone's not going to get the memo, or didn't go to training, or they're new, or it was just so legit of an email that they were just fooled. Recent events show that most of the sophisticated organizations can become victims of spear phishing attacks, as we talked about with White House, RSA. Users don't care about the network, and it's really not their job to care about the network. It's you guys who are defending the network that needs to think about, okay, if a user clicks a link, do I have the right things in place and are they configured properly? It's your job as the security or as the defender to make sure that that doesn't happen. The last one is the most important, right? Employees should be able to open up anything on the network without any fear of compromise. Now that's kind of what we're striving for, the final goal. It's not easy to get there, but.
And the example that I like to use real quick in this is the HR department, right? Everybody has an HR department in their company, right? And so if you think about it by business unit, what is the HR department's job? Their job is to open emails with Word documents and PDFs and Flash and any possible insecure document that you can have out there on the internet. Their job is to get one and open it, right? That's their job. And they're usually not the highest paid people in the company, right? So they don't really care about your security. All they want to do is open that PDF, get the document, get the stuff entered in there, and go to lunch, right? So what you have to do as defenders of the network is you have to plan on those HR people are gonna open an infected PDF all the time. So what can I do to prevent that, right? And because once again, it's not their job. And so when an HR person opens an infected link and it infects the network and a bunch of stuff gets compromised, I don't see it being their fault, right? It's not their fault. It's the defenders of the network, the IT security department's fault because they did not plan for that.
All right, so first thing we do normally is we start email harvesting, right? Basically, we take a look and we see, what's the domain name, what we try to find on Google, what's a naming convention, those types of things. What we do is we take everything that we have, we edit that list down. Most of the time what we end up doing is we move anybody with engineer or network or security or anything that might have anything to do with IT in their title, and we remove them because those are going to be the people who are going to know right away that this is not a legit email, or maybe sometimes they don't. We've had that too, but basically, we want to be not really as stealthy as possible, but we want to make sure that it's getting to the people that are going to fall for it before the defenders actually catch on to what's going on.
That's what I'm talking about by targeting business unit, right?
Yeah, so there's some great tools that are out there, Googmail, Whois, Harvester, but our favorite was actually written by this gentleman right here, Whois Davis. It's called Jigsaw, if you guys have seen it. So what Jigsaw actually is, so Jigsaw is actually a website that's for sharing business contact information. Right? It's a legitimate website from Salesforce.com. So as with most legitimate websites like LinkedIn and Facebook and those types of things, they tend to give away too much information. So what we ended up doing was, originally we were doing a search, we were copying and pasting and trying to come up with emails, and then Whois wrote the Jigsaw script that will actually just go out. You give it the ID of the company that you want to scour, and it pulls down all the information about it. So this is actually Accuvant. It gives you a little bit of information, and then up here, I don't know if you guys can see it that far in the back, but it gives a breakdown of all the different contacts that it was able to find or that are registered on the site. So what Jigsaw does then is it takes that and it creates, I think, 4 different combinations, first initial last name at organization.com or whatever the domain is, first name dot last name. It just goes through whatever the most common ones are. And sometimes what happens, like I think at Google, they have an option where people can pick their own name, but that doesn't really matter because they have back-end aliases on their Exchange server that probably still conforms to the same combination. Like when I worked at a company, my email was like EM9674, but they still had eric.milam at whatever on the back end. So if somebody sent it eric.milam, it still got to me. So here's, that's really bad.
I know.
But here's an example of the Jigsaw results. So basically what we were just talking about, it'll spit out a CSV. This is just put out into the command shell, but it'll actually do a CSV file for you that you can actually go through and filter. And I can't even read it, but basically.
I'll have a PDF of this afterwards if anybody wants it.
But basically, the great thing about Jigsaw that the other tools don't give you is it's going to give you the physical location of the user. It's going to tell you what department they're in. It's going to give you their emails, their phone numbers, those types of things. So you get a lot more information, so it's easier to filter and target those individuals. Like Martin was saying, if we just want to target, say, marketing, or we just want to target HR, we know from our list of 3,000 that we can start with maybe these 50 and send to them.
So basically this just gives us a list of email addresses. And there's all kinds of different ways to get emails on the internet. But like Eric was saying, this is our favorite because it gives the business unit.
So once you have that, the first thing you want to do is create a valid email list. So one of the things that I like to do, which would be step like 1.5, and me and Martin kind of thought about this after doing so many of these, is we like to take that list that we've got, once we filtered it down to say, okay, we've got these 3,000 individuals, how do we know what emails are actually legitimate, right? The only way to do that is to send an email to them, and hopefully there's a bounce back of some kind. So what I like to do is, Sylvia's my mom's name, so this email just basically says, hey, Sylvia's 60th birthday party. Please let me know if you can come to this party on such and such date. We send it out to everybody in the list, and of course we get the bounce back. So we get the mail delivery notification saying that they weren't valid, so we can remove those from the list. What you get too a lot of times is when people are on vacation, right? In the office, bless you. So you get the out of office replies. And a lot of times it says, hey, I'm not here, but talk to so-and-so, or email so-and-so, or more information about the organization. So we look and say, is that person in our list? No. Okay, we can put them in. Now we know that's a legitimate email that's going to get through. And then one thing that we started getting too, a lot of companies use the legal footers at the bottom. How many of you guys have that when you send an email, it auto appends? Yeah. So we just copy and paste that, and we throw that into our final email. So by the time we get to our final email, we've got, we've already built these layers of trust just in the layout and what's actually contained within the email, so that when the users read it, they're already going to feel comfortable seeing the same language that they're used to seeing. Did we skip some?
Yeah.
Oops. We've never done this talk before, so we apologize.
Alright. So what we like to do is, oh, I know I put it down, but hold on. We're not there yet.
What Carlos said was completely wrong.
Sorry, we're not there yet. We're almost there. So the next thing you want to do when you're doing this is create the scenario, right? How are we going to fish the company? And this is super, super important because when you're targeting a company, your fish has to actually make sense, right? So like, we really like to target open enrollment, 401k, health benefits, because everybody's concerned about their damn 401k plan, right? It's a little below the belt, but we like to do it. And
we rarely get that one approved, to be honest with you, but it's the best.
Right, and the thing about like stuff like health benefits, right, is that if you're targeting a company, you need to do some research, right? If your company has 75% part-time employees, it doesn't make sense to send them a fish about health benefits, right? Because all those part-time employees don't have benefits, right? Or rarely, unless your company's super awesome. So, for the most part, they don't. So you've got to do a little bit of research so that your fish actually makes sense for the company. And so we've done quite a few. We used to do this work from home project years ago. It doesn't work too good anymore, but we would say, congratulations, we're starting a pilot program. We've selected 50 people to start working from home on Fridays or whatever, and not super, the thing about this scenario stuff is do not overcomplicate it. What I like to do is every time my company, Accuvant, sends out some dumbass survey or letter from the HR department or something, I copy all that stuff down and put it in a text file and use that to fish the next organization, right? So for example, we just had this thing recently where they got this external website called skills.accuvant.matrix or something, some third-party crap or whatever, and they sent it out to everybody in the company. And they didn't give a username and a password, they just said, everybody log on here and write down your skills, right? And we were like, no way, right? Like, I'm gonna put my domain password and that stupid thing, but we copied that entire website. We got all that stuff for the next, for the next thing. The thing that we found we like the best is the security report, right? Because every company has security and every company has pen testers. The reason we started doing this is we go on pen tests all the time, internal pen tests, right? And then another part of the engagement will be phishing, right? So what we decided we wanted to do is, these people at the company have seen us walking around for a week. People are like, oh, shh, those are the auditors, or, you know, or whatever. You know, and so everybody's like, oh, those are those weird guys or whatever. And then the next week, you send out an email to everybody in the company that's like, hey, we just had a security assessment and some people failed, right? We'll get into the email in a second because everybody likes it when other people fail. And everybody wants to read about that, right? So we love the security report. So the next thing you want to do in the list is creating the email, right? If anybody went to Jason's talk, this is very, very, very important, because if the email isn't legit, nobody's going to click your link, right? So what's the most important part? The subject line, what comes up in your Outlook, right? If the subject line isn't enticing, I'm definitely not opening the email, right? So that's the most important part. Jason talked about this. Make it easy to read. I mean, like most people, I'm pretty sure that maybe one person in my company has a PhD. I mean, most people are pretty normal, right?
He left for Twitter, I think.
Oh, he left. No more PhDs. But anyway, so, you know, make it easy to read, right? Don't overcomplicate it. Like, it's not that hard, right? But it has to look legitimate and build user trust. That means spelling, grammar, right? All I know is when I send an email out to my company that has 20 or 30 people on the list, I'm so worried about making a grammar mistake because I'm from Kentucky. I'll read the email like 50 times right before I send it out. The next thing you want to do is give your users a reason to click, right? This is the next most important part. If there's no reason to click on the link, they're not going to. And then make it fit the organization, right? So use language that's conducive to the organization, right? Go to their website, read it, right? If you ever notice, like when you read a book and then you write something afterwards, you'll write like that book, right? If it's soon enough after. So if you go to the website and read everything in the whole pages and then go to write an email, by just brain association, you'll write in the same context we found. Okay, here we go.
So we're gonna show you what our phishing email looks, and this is 100% legit. We've used it on a million different phishing campaigns. A million, literally.
We've literally done this at least 100 times with success every time. So what we like to do is use GoDaddy, and we'll get into the domain names, but GoDaddy is awesome because they give you one free email.
And one's all you need.
Right. And so what we like to do is put it in templates, and Eric's going to go through it with you here.
So basically what we're looking at, like I said, this is actually our legit email that we send out. Some of the points right away you can see, I mean, looks professional, right? I mean, the spacing, you know, everything, it's not all over the place. We've got right there in the subject line, information security audit report findings first quarter 2013. We've made it a high priority, so of course it's important. People should read it. And then basically it's just saying, hey, this comes from the Office of Information Security and Assurance. Now that might not be the actual security department's name, but they don't know that, and it looks official and that sounds official.
It sounds legit. It could be a new group, right? Because it's Q1. They could be starting something new.
And if you, I mean, you could probably very easily look on LinkedIn and do a search for security for that company, and you might be able to find the actual name. But if not, I mean, that works 100% of the time. So, and I'm just going to read through some of it real quick. But basically, it's just stating, as you know, information security is an integral aspect of our business. Recognizing that fact, Accuvon Incorporated, and we're going to pick on our company. So, Accuvon Incorporated recently performed a security audit of all the corporate properties. Assessment included a bunch of different phases of the attack, you know, internal, external. Results of security audit are available for review at secure.accuvant-portal.com. Now, everything that we do, at least we've done mostly, is we don't try to obfuscate or change what the name looks like. We just put -portal on it, and then we have a subdomain of secure. And another thing is we don't obfuscate what the actual link is. I mean, what they see when they hover over it, because a lot of users have been taught to, oh, hover over the link and see where it goes. And Jason was talking about, you know, you can even obfuscate that until the link gets clicked. But if they hover over it, they'll see it looks legit, it's going where it's supposed to be going. And then it just basically says, hey, there's a bunch of people who didn't really follow the rules, and because of that, the auditors are successful. So in the second paragraph, we tell them, hey, as an organization, it's our responsibility to stay on top of that, and since you're a part of our organization, show us how committed you are to our organization by downloading this, reading it, following the tips and recommendations that are in there. And just basically saying, hey, it's kind of your duty as an employee, and it's imperative to the success of our company. So it doesn't matter if it's a 20-year-old who's excited about starting this company and wants to show he's a good employee, or the 70-year-old person working graveyard or at something. They're still going to feel like it's their duty to open it up. And then basically, it just says security is not the sole purview of the information security team. It's all of our responsibility. So please, click the link, go there. And then what we put at the bottom is, information security assurance. We put the actual address of the company. We put an actual phone number of the company. And then we take about 5 seconds on Google to get an image. And we put that in there at the bottom because that looks legit. And then here's that legal footer that we were talking about. So when you look at this and you put it all together, right, everything in your brain, when you see it, looks legit, everything looks right. I'm going to go ahead and do this because it's something I should be doing.
So I'm going to go ahead and fire this. I told you we're picking on our own company. So I'm going to go ahead and fire this off to my mboss@accuvant.com email. Right. There we go. We'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay, so a lot of times, we get asked by the customer. So mine and Martin's goal during these types of tests, as we were stating, we don't feel it's a user's fault. So we don't track who actually goes to the site. We tell them basically, hey, so-and-so, or so many people logged in, a provider has credentials, or we got remote access on so many systems. We give them kind of a number that's associated with how many people, unique visits to the site, those types of things. But the customers are really starting to ask us now, I want to know exactly who went there. And like I said, we feel bad about that because we don't believe that it's their fault, but they want it. So since they're the customer, what they say goes.
And we will do this, but we always try to talk to them about how it's not really the user's fault. And most of the time after we get done doing that, even though they still want to know, it's mainly because they still feel like they can educate those people in some way. It's not because people are going to get fired.
We hope it's not.
We hope not, but for the most part, we try to pretend this with an explanation kind of like we're doing here, which generally seems
right. So another person on our team, Brandon McCann, he's at, I'm going to say Znox, but we call him Zeknox. On Twitter, he wrote a SendMail RB script, which will base64 encode automatically the email address that it's being sent to, and append that to the URL. So when they click it, that ends up in the Apache logs, and then we can parse the Apache logs and reverse the base64, and we know who actually visited it. So I don't know if you can see that here, but he also wrote a decode logs.rb script that works with it. So you can just run that against your script, against your Apache log files. It'll parse them out and it'll reverse it for you.
And that's all open source. His link's down here at the bottom. He's got a whole page on phishing which incorporates this. So if you want to check it out, use the script, whatever, it's all there right there at the bottom.
Yeah, his blog is up on pentestgeek.com. So he's one of the co-founders of that.
All right, so the next most important thing, right, is creating the website, right? We've created a scenario, we got a list of email addresses, we got our phishing email. Now what we got to do is we got to create a website, right? So the first thing that we always do, like we were showing you in the email, is we always use a real domain name, right? So we have decided that all that obfuscated, weird, like click links and go to China kind of stuff, that stuff doesn't work because people have been trained to hover over the link, right? But what we found is that if your link goes where it says it goes, it doesn't really matter if it's wrong because it looks the same when you hover over it, right? So we used to do a lot. Anybody went to Jason's talk? He showed a couple of domain names where he switched a 0 and a 1, and we do stuff like that, and we have before, but a lot of times those type of domain names aren't available and stuff. So what we decided, what we started doing was, you can always get company-portal, right, all the time, right? And everybody has like VPNportal.com, like all that stuff. So just on a whim one time, Eric started using company-portal, and then what we would do is create a subdomain of secure. So the entire URL is secure.accuvant-portal.com, right? And so we're all security people here in this talk, so we're like, I'd never fall for that bullshit, but they do. Yeah, I'm here to tell you, and even security people do, right? So that's our name. Why do we, there's some other reasons we register a real domain name. With GoDaddy, you get one free email address. Really cool with them. The next reason is reverse DNS. So anybody that has an iron port or IDS of some kind, a lot of them check for reverse DNS, and they will drop any email if it doesn't have reverse DNS. So GoDaddy sets all that up for you. The other thing is Whois information. A lot of IDSs and that type of stuff are trained to drop certain Whois information, right? If it's not fully legitimate and hasn't been filled out properly. And we'll show that in a minute. We fill ours all out perfectly properly. All right then. So the next thing you want to do is look for a portal page on this company's website that looks the same, right? So we want it to look just like theirs. VPNs are the best thing that ever happened to phishing because it's a pre-made login screen, right? So like, I love any company that puts their login screen on the internet. Awesome. So like, we just go there, we download the code, we get the CSS file, the images, all that type of stuff. A lot of times, we didn't do it for this demo, but a lot of times we buy an SSL cert, right? Because you think about it, I mean, we're getting paid a lot of money for this stuff. So if I gotta spend a couple $100 on a cert, I don't really care. So I'll buy an SSL cert, right, for the site so that I can HTTPS it. Search Google for logo images, obviously. We like to steal security warnings, all that type of stuff. Language from their website, right? The more language you have, the better. We always take the favicon, that's old school. Language from the website, I covered that. And then the next thing that we really like to do is we like to change the Whois info, which Eric is going to talk about here.
And another good thing about using the SSL cert, like I did a major anti-malware company recently, and I set up my phishing site on just regular port 80, and then I had it call to payloads over SSL, and that was able to bypass all their stuff, right, because it's encrypted. So the encrypted connection to the other server was able to pull it down, and then when caught or flagged, and then it was your performance.
So sorry.
That was, all right. So changing the Whois data. As Martin was saying, we love GoDaddy. If you guys don't love GoDaddy, you're going to love GoDaddy after this talk, especially if you do phishing. So the how many people, Whois information, does that make sense? Everybody?
Yeah. You know what that is?
So some smart people like to look up, you know, when they get this email or go to the domain and take a look and say, well, I'm going to look at the Whois information because that'll tell me exactly who sent me this. So in GoDaddy, all you've got to do is just check 2 boxes at the top and you can change it to anything you want. So we just look up the Whois information for the company that we're phishing, and then we just put that in there. Some of the small changes I put, like first name's Bob, last name Johnson, I put Johnson's. No comments, Emilio?
That's really our IT manager.
Yeah.
We're really picking on our company.
Yeah, we were picking on our company pretty bad. We've got the true address. I changed the phone numbers up. Like this is 0600. I just changed it to a 1. The fax I changed it to a 2. And then the email address, just in case I don't want them sending, hey, this domain's been registered or Whois information's been changed. So instead of tech admin, I just put an S on the end. Still looks legit. It's going to pass the eyeball test.
So now what happens is everybody knows how to check Whois information, right? So now,
yeah. So when you look at it, I mean, right away you see registrant at the top. I mean, that looks pretty close, right? And then you look at the, this one on this side is our portal. This one is the actual Accubon site. So if you look at ours and theirs, you can see that, I mean, it's fairly close. At first glance, it's gonna, like I said, gonna pass the eyeball check. The main thing is, if we haven't actually registered the domain, the same domain that they're registering from, that's possibly gonna be different. But a lot of companies are going to GoDaddy, right? So,
and nobody's looking at the name servers. Everybody's just looking at the registrant, right? Which is the first entry in the thing. Like, oh, this is legit, right? Now, this is one reason why we don't send to IT technical people, because they might go down and notice the name servers are different, right? But I can guarantee you there's nobody in my HR department that can tell me the difference between those two things.
They wouldn't even be able to put a command prompt, I don't think. But just in case, that's what we do.
All right, so we talked a little bit about our phishing website, right? So, what we did, it's a little bit messed up because of the
screen.
No. I promise this is straight. Normally, it's a little bit messed up because of the projector.
So, as you're looking, just start at the top. See at the top says Secure Accubon Portal. We've got the favicon. Doesn't seem like much, but nice little layer of trust, right? They're expecting to see it, it's there. Go down, we've got the logo. I didn't find the best logo for this one, but normally it looks clean and crisp. You know, they see that. You look at the address bar, secure.activant-portal.com. Now it doesn't have a lock, it's not HTTPS, but that's okay because we put the lock right there, right by where they're gonna log in. So they're gonna look at that and be like, all right, yeah, we're good. All right. So we've got, we just named it real default secure portal, employee login. We've got trouble logging in link. We've got places for them to log in. We've got the copyright information. And then over here, we've got a nice disclaimer saying, hey, please log in with your account. But if you do anything bad to this site, we're monitoring you. So no malicious code, no disruption to service, because we'll come after you. And we're monitoring you, and we are monitoring you, but it's me and Martin that are monitoring you.
So the first part of this site, what we like to do, and I'll talk a little bit more in a second, is we like to do a multi-layered attack, right? Because one thing doesn't always work, right? So the first thing that we like to do is log credentials, right? Login ID and password. And we get domain credentials like this all the time. And the reason that getting domain credentials is awesome is because what do most people have externally on their websites? OWA, right? So that people can log into their Outlook accounts. So
how many companies actually have OWA behind a VPN or requires additional expert? You don't care.
So several companies do. So if your OWA is not behind a VPN, it should be. So the next thing that we have, a couple things on this site. So this is actually, see how it says plain.html? This is sort of a demo version, and we'll show the main attack in just a second. But we actually monitor our GoDaddy email account, right? So after we send out the emails, we're actually looking at the account, because what happens is we get people that email back and say, I can't log into the site, it's not doing anything, like I'm having trouble. And what happens is we answer those emails, right? And that builds a whole other layer of trust, because now somebody is on the other end of that email. They're legit, they're not in Nigeria, right? So we actually answer that email. And so what we do is we have a little link down here, you can see where it says trouble logging in. So
go ahead and click it.
We just let our users go here.
Help desk live chat, right? We can help you out. We're sorry you're experiencing these problems, but you know what? Click this link, and when you're prompted to click the run button to begin the session, just click it.
That's right. And if you see right down here, we got help desk EXE. And so once you install that, that will help us help you access the website.
And a lot of times what we do too, like I didn't do it in this one, I apologize, but we just set like a regular redirect. So when it comes up, we sign our binary. So when it comes up, it's signed with a legitimate certificate. And it just basically everything's green because it can go out there and verify it. So the executable isn't, you get that red mark, that says, I don't know if I want to run this from the internet. You don't get that when you code sign.
So if you code sign your binary, you don't get that. Are you sure you want to run this, right? And it doesn't matter what you code sign it with. We code sign it with our Accubon stuff all the time because nobody's checking all that, right? Yeah. So doesn't matter. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit here. The next important thing is choosing the payload, right? So this is really, really important, right? And this is where knowing your target is really important. So, for example, knowing what type of antivirus your company uses that you're targeting, right? Very, very important. How do you find that out, right? Go to LinkedIn. We love LinkedIn almost as much as we love Jigsaw. Because the thing is that you can go to LinkedIn and you can search for, or any other job, monster.com or anything like that, right? And you search for company name, acme.such and such, and you look down there and you see what they're hiring for, right? So if I go to jasonstreetscompany.com and I go on to Monster and I see that they're hiring for a McAfee specialist.
Expert.
Oh, McAfee expert. I'm pretty sure they're using McAfee AD, right? If they're looking for a Blue Coat expert, they're probably using a Blue Coat proxy. I got to get around that. If they're looking for Juniper technicians, they're probably using a Juniper firewall, right? So, what I'm saying is that those type of websites are an absolute goldmine for information, right? So depending on all that information, I want to choose my payload, right? We like to use Metasploit because it's easy. It already includes hundreds of payloads. It already has encoders. It already has all these reverse connections set up. We usually use the HTTPS reverse connection. The reason being is that every company I've ever been to allows out 80 and 443, right? They might block everything else, but they have to allow out 80 and 443. And so we like to use 443, and the reason is because 443 is HTTPS, as everybody knows, And unless you are doing some type of SSL interception or binary packet inspection at your proxy or firewall, there's no way for your network to know what that binary traffic is. So I can send EXEs over HTTPS all day long and it has no idea, it just looks like binary traffic. It's just encapsulated. So we always like to use HTTPS unless we find out that an organization is doing some type of deep packet inspection. In that situation, we default to a reverse TCP all ports payload, which basically you can give it a range of ports. We use this for egress testing with clients when they say, we only allow out 80 and 443 and nothing else. It's secure, it's totally locked down. And we'll say, all right, let's test it. And so we'll start a reverse TCP all ports payload on port 1, and we'll send it all the way up to 65.535. It takes a long time, but it tests every single port on the way out, right? And so then we can say, oh, well, we thought you weren't allowing anything out, but port 99.389 is open, and they'll be like, what? And so that's how you find out. These are all the benefits of this type of testing that have nothing to do with getting your users in trouble. The next thing we want to do is defeating AV, right? There's a million ways. I'm not going to totally go into defeating AV, but there's encoders, there's custom packers, there's binary obfuscation. We digitally sign our binaries. I'm just going to show you really quickly. For this particular payload, we did not do much.
And this is straight out of SMB exec.
You can find this code in SMB exec, and I know you all probably can't see this, but basically this is a bash script, just a little bitty shell script in Linux. And what we did was we took a Metasploit payload, we created it, we used a couple of encoders, and then we took the binary, we grabbed out some bad characters that are found by AV signatures all the time, and we went in there and then we took out, we did some C and some SED, and we basically take a random seed and then we run through the entire thing and randomize the binary and then build it all the way back together. And the cool thing about this is it's completely random every time, and you can choose the number of seeds that you want to randomize it by.
In SMB exec, it'll randomly do it every single time for you guys, just so that the main thing is the signature is different every single time you run it.
The only reason we're showing this is because this is like 30 lines of code, right? And I'm going to show you how easy it is to bypass a corporate AV that's on my computer with this 30 lines of code. The last most important thing is post-exploitation, right? And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but basically, when you phish an organization, you get a shell, you have got to know what you're doing when you get in there, right? Because your shell might not last that long. Do you create an account? Are you looking for something? Is it smash and grab? Are you looking for some persistent access? Do you want to be able to access the network for the rest of 2013 or whatever? So really, really important to have a plan of what you are going to do, because this happens really, really fast. You send out 1,000 emails, the shells start rolling in, your screen's flying by. You better have a plan of what you want to do when you get into the network, because the Chinese have a plan.
A lot of times what we do is, we set up Metasploit, right? It has the auto run script, so we'll set it up to do certain things. One of them, of course, is a lot of times migrate into the, spawn notepad and migrate into that process.
So basically, we want to show putting all this together, right? We talked about all these steps, one thing at a time, and we want to show putting it together, and we really hope it's going to work.
We're going over Carlos's iPad.
Yeah, and it's going to be a little bit slow because I'm using Carlos's iPad for internet. But so basically, you can see this is my corporate Accuvant VM, right? And if you look down here, you can see that I got McAfee.
And it says its status is okay.
It's okay.
It's all up to date.
Fully updated. I also got
Big Fix.
Big Fixed, fully endpoint
Big
manager.
Brother's watching us, so we're okay, right?
That's right. My company is monitoring this VM, right? So they are telling me that I'm okay. I also got BGP.
We got Java's all up to date.
Java's up to date. Alright.
Should we update it?
Okay.
Quick, Java.
Oh, what? Hold on, that's bullshit. So I did update it this morning, which sucks. But, alright, so anyway, the thing about what we're about to do is it doesn't have anything to do with Java updates. So here's our email, right? This came in my Outlook, my corporate Outlook. So what have I already made it by, right? This email has already made it by, we have some iron port things.
We got stuff.
We got stuff. We got some
Like,
cool
like
stuff. Like, we're a security company. We got money. We got cool stuff. I promise.
Right.
So I've already made it by whatever email thing we got going on. I've already made it by our spam filter and all that stuff. This email has come down to my desktop, right? It's high importance.
And also at the top, one thing I didn't talk about, you see the name, information security and assurance. We always set the actual name. And the only thing that really would look wrong about this is it's infosec@accuvant-portal.com. But again, people aren't gonna look at that. They're gonna read the content.
See, and you can see when I hover over my link, this is what you're trained to do as a user, right? Does this link go where it's gonna go? It does.
We might as well click it then.
Let's click it.
Let's see what happens. There we go. See how much better that looks? Oh my God, we got Java. I wonder if that's the Java update.
I wonder. So the thing about this is it's a Java applet. This is a Java vulnerability that is not going to be fixed by an update, right? This has been around for years. It's not new and it's not revolutionary, and there's pretty much not much you can do about it but turn off Java.
So yeah, so basically what we're looking at here, right? We've got a signed binary. I don't know if you can tell that this is signed versus not signed.
So we code signed the applet as well, right?
Yeah,
So
sorry.
go ahead.
So you'll notice that basically at the top, Accuvant Security Verified Safe. That's the name. That's what we name the applet. We can change it on the fly for whoever the company is.
It's safe.
It's safe. It's a verified publisher LLC. It's verified. And we've got reverse DNS, so it's coming from secure.accuvant-portal.com. It's coming from where it's supposed to. And one of the other main differences is, you'll know, I don't know if you can tell, but the checkbox is checked automatically for always run this content.
Right. We like to
That's because
populate
it's
that
signed.
for you, just in case.
Because it's a signed binary, it does that automatically. And what happens now, so if Martin clicks run, it's going to inject our binary and run it. And hopefully we'll get an interpreter session.
Oh yeah. So, then back at the fort, we've got our Metasploit listener running.
Boom! There you go.
And, if you'll notice, my McAfee status is still okay.
Everything is still fine. So the next thing is, let's say they ran that. They don't even know. Can you go back to that?
Oh yeah, sorry. Where, which one? This one?
Yeah. So they still have an opportunity to put in their credentials. They can still put in their login ID and their password, and they click login. I don't know if you want to show them.
That's alright. So a lot of times we get logins too, right? The thing about that, the applet is that we put it on a 7-second delay, right? Because some people know not to run shifty applets, right? So what we did was we put it on a delay, so if you exit out, you have about 7 to 10 seconds where there's nothing on the screen.
You can put your credentials.
Where you can put your credentials in this, and then we log that to a text file. It's just a simple PHP post request, right?
If they don't make the 7 seconds, Java applet pops back up. They gotta click cancel again. So it'll keep coming up until they actually run it or leave the page.
So there's been times when we haven't got a shell, right? The shell didn't work, something went wrong, whatever, but we get credentials, right? And then what we do with those credentials is log into OWA and start looking for more credentials, right? Or single factor VPNs. Who's still got a VPN that's not too, no one's gonna admit it, so I don't know why I'm gonna say that. But anyway,
I mean, even the
there
global
are-
address book. You go in and you dump the global address book, or you forward this email out to other people in the global address book, and then it's coming again from another secure, trusted entity within the organization.
All right, so a couple things to consider, right? These are things that you can talk to your users about. Email and attachments. Do you know the sender, right? And can the information that people are being asked of you be used to attack you or your company? Basically, if I'm telling you to go to a website, it can be used to attack your company. Is the link suspicious or raising any flags? Like, yeah, our link was suspicious if you really look at it because it wasn't right, but the thing is that we didn't obfuscate it so it looked right? And, IT or security is never going to ask you for a password over the phone or via an email, hopefully. Unfortunately, that's not always true, but we would like to think that that's not true. So these are all things that when you're looking at your email, and this may seem elementary to some people here that are in security or whatever, but I still, when I get an email like that one I was talking about earlier from skills.accuvantmatrix.com or some bullshit like that, I go through this checklist because it looks like bull to me. And And turns out it was legitimate, and I still haven't logged into it even since they told me it was legitimate, because I'm still not doing it. So, anyway, these are things to consider.
One other thing to note too is any company that uses email is vulnerable to this.
So, we've talked about how we fish companies, right? So, we can't get out of this talk without talking about things that stop us and what we should be doing.
So, you know, as we've been talking about this whole time, right, this talk is about beyond user awareness because we don't feel it's the user's fault. We do have it there at the bottom. We do think it's important. We're not saying don't train your users. We're not saying it's not effective. They're kind of your first line of defense, but you don't put all your eggs in that basket, right? So you're looking at stuff like network segmentation, as Martin was talking about with the HR department or marketing or whoever, segment them off the best you can. Martin always tells a story that, you know, basically the HR department only needs access to certain things, maybe a web application to put stuff in and maybe going out to the internet, but they shouldn't have access to touch any of the other servers or access to the finance department or those types of things.
And I was going to say, this network segmentation is a victim of laziness, right? It's basically the more open your network is, the better it works, the less stuff there is for your IT department to mess up or whatever, but as a flip side, the less vulnerable it is. So the key to network segmentation is keeping it in small chunks and taking the time to visit each business unit, like Eric was talking about, HR, and make a list of what does HR have to access, right? This application, this application, this application, Active Directory, and Facebook, or whatever, right? And so now I can put them in a box, and I can say this is all they have to access, right? And I don't have to do this all at once. The thing is I can start small. I can start with my smallest business unit, I can start with my riskiest business unit, or whatever, and I can go from there and gradually build up my organization into security.
So the next things we're looking at, IPS, IDS. Do you have one? Is it configured properly? Is someone actually reading the logs or getting the alerts? Are they responding to them? Egress filtering. Are you actually restricting what can leave the network? Are there logs associated with that? Standardizing the antivirus implementation. Some might say it doesn't make sense to do that. A lot of companies, they buy other companies and they have their own way of doing things. And standardizing them is a good way to know that if an update gets pushed out, you know exactly where it got pushed out to, who got it, who didn't get it. And if you've got to do that across 8 or 9 different business units because they all have different AV, that's going to be more difficult and more things get missed. So it's kind of a numbers game.
And you hear a lot nowadays that AV is garbage and it's worthless and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to challenge that, but what I am going to say is that it does have its place, right? It is a layer of protection. So if I have an AV implementation and it only catches 80% of malware, those are kind of shitty odds, but it did catch 80%, right? And it's if the AV is my entire endpoint protection, then I'm going to get owned no matter what AV I have, right? So what we're talking about here is layered security, and so antivirus is definitely a layer of security that belongs in the mix.
Yeah, really what we're talking about here is if you think about from the moment that the user clicks the link until we get our reverse connection, what is it traversing across your network? And are those things catching it, right? We already talked about two-factor authentication, using encryption, like on-the-fly encryption is the best. I don't know if there's any good solutions out there, but we don't normally mention product. And then user awareness. One other thing I want to note that's not on here is if you want to do this type of testing in your environment, this is the most politically charged testing you will ever do at your company. Because what we're doing is we're duping people, right? And people handle that differently. Some people are like, hey, I learned a lesson. Some people threaten to sue us and make us take our website down at 2 in the morning and transfer the domain to them. It's just, you never know how it's
not
going to
happen.
Yeah, not that would ever happen. But, and if you're having that done, get buy-in as high up in the chain of command as you can and let them know. A good, company like me and Martin, we will tell you to do that, and that this stuff is important because people could lose their job over stuff.
People get their feelings hurt over this stuff, and if those people are more important than you, it's not good.
Yeah. Not that that's ever happened.
Not that that's ever happened to us.
Might be the director falls for it.
That's right.
Director of IT security.
That's right.
Go ahead.
And so basically, Summing all this talk up, like I said, is user awareness should not be the goal of social engineering testing. It is a much, much, much broader scope of testing. Now, granted that not every company knows this. We get brought into this type of testing all the time, and companies actually want to test their users, right? But they don't even realize that what we're doing is testing everything across the entire gamut of the network, right, to see what works. And if you think about it, there's not a lot of external attack vectors left on your network, right? So basically there's three major ones as far as I'm concerned. There's web applications, there's social engineering with emailing, and there's wireless, right? I consider those the three external attack vectors because getting in via, a default telnet port is few and far between, that type of thing. So I consider those the three things. So it's a pretty big deal to test this phishing stuff, right? And so, like I said, testing should encompass all the defenses of an organization, right? Limiting the scope of this type of testing is not doing anything but hurting your organization. We do have companies that try to limit it. They're like, hey, why don't you just send us that binary and we'll click run and then we'll just see what happens and we'll sort of try to determine what our failures are, there. And that's okay because some companies don't have a very mature secure program. Some companies are just getting started. Security has gotten really popular in the last 5 years. A lot of companies weren't thinking about this. Like, we're not gonna make fun of you, we're gonna work with you, right? We're gonna say, okay, let's start out small, right? Let's do this or whatever. But we always wanna say that the entire attack should be done to actually get the most money out of your budget from A to Z.
And a lot of times you train these users, they're the beginning of your incident response for something like this, right? A lot of times. You want to see, are people actually going to call and start that process? And how long does it take from the time that your help desk is notified till our website gets black holed or something so people can't get to it? So you have a real good idea of where that breakdown in actual people process is happening as well.
And then the next thing is, no company has an unlimited IT budget that I've ever been to. If you do work at one, let me know, because I might need a job. But anyway, so everybody's got a budget, right, that they've got to fall into. So we're not saying that user awareness is useless, because it's definitely can be effective, right? But what I'm saying is that when you're on a limited budget, spending a bunch of money on fancy classes from some fancy organization to come in and do some fancy slides like ours might not be the most effective use of your budget, right? The most effective use of your budget might be to buy a blue coat that does SSL interception, or something like that. And so we don't mind telling you that because we don't sell any product, we don't even care, right?
We just want to own shit.
And so the thing is that sitting down with some pen testers like us that don't care what product you buy, and going through talking about, hey, this is what I got to spend, can you help me determine what the most effective use of my budget is, right? Because I might not be able to secure every single endpoint that you're talking about, but in your all's experience, which is the, which thing can I secure, that'll give me the most coverage, right? I know it's not going to be 100%, but what can I do to secure the most? So working with your clients after the phishing engagement and all that type of stuff to help them with that is a big thing that we like to do. So that's all we got. Here's our contact information if anybody wants to email us or Twitter, tweet us or whatever, and there you go. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions from the room? Question, no question?
Yes, sir.
Just out of curiosity, how many organizations will deny you using phishing attacks for your pen test, which is how many will authorize it?
So basically the way our company works is we're just the pen testers. We don't actually sell the jobs. So we have a specific pen test type sales team, right, that actually sells the jobs. They do the best they can, but what happens a lot of times is, they're trying to sell stuff and make a number, right? We all know how salespeople work. So a lot of times they sell stuff that maybe the company doesn't need or is not ready for, or that type of thing. So me and Eric always feel like we have a real responsibility to come into a test and say, okay, this is what they've told us to do. This is what's going to happen. and this is what the fallout could be. Are we all sure we really want to do this? And we found that once we do that, a lot of times we'll put some customers at ease, but we'll also warn some customers that are like, oh, whoa, that's not what I was talking about with that sales guy. He totally got that wrong. So we feel like it's our responsibility to go over that type of stuff and make sure that they want the testing they want. It happens a lot with Red Team, right? Because Red Team sounds really cool, and somebody saw that Tiger Team show or whatever.
Jason Street.
They call up Activon and they're like, I want the Red Team, you know? And then me and Eric and Whois will come out, and then they'll be like, oh, that's not what we wanted.
Within an hour, they're like, forget it.
So that happens a lot. So I can't speak for every company, but that's something that we do is basically make sure that our clients are getting what they actually need or paid for or whatever.
Yeah, the main thing is bridging that gap between sales, like he was saying, because our sales, that's one of the reasons we wrote this talk, because our sales team sells us as a user awareness, and it's not. It's really not. It's an opportunity to really take a look at what's going on across a bunch of processes.
I have a question. When you finally report the results, do you sit down with IT department or is anyone from finance already involved? Because from my perspective, I see it in a way from the finance department. You know, this is the people that pay for the stuff. Have you sit down with someone from the finance department? Because it's more than
What we do, and so every company's different obviously, but what we do is after we create a report, we give our company about 2 weeks to digest the report, and then we come in and we do an outbrief, right? Either like a presentation or we have a call and we go over all the findings in the report. And so we allow that company to invite whoever they want to those briefings, right? And a lot of times we'll do 2, 3, and 4 of them, right? We might do an executive level one, we might do one with IT security, and then we might do one for the whole company to show, like something like this, right? Because if everybody in the company got this email phish and then I come in a couple of weeks later and I put that email up on the thing and I'm like, hey, who got this? Everybody's like, oh, you know, so like, that drives the point home, right? So we do all types of different presentations.
One thing too, and that's a good question for a different reason, is when we do these tests or any type of pen testing, a lot of times we're hired by the IT department and we're making them look bad. So that report doesn't leave the director's desk, right? The director gets it, it doesn't go anywhere, so shit doesn't get fixed. And that's one of the big things is we don't normally see anybody outside of director. We do end up with, you know, C-level executives and stuff, but a lot of times it's really never goes past that director level. But also we don't report, we just report numbers unless they specifically ask for users. The users are never included in the report, we'll send them that on the side. So they get nice pie graphs and all that stuff and, you know, screenshots of all the shells and stuff. You're next. Anybody else?
Anybody else? Anybody else? Sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah.
We didn't see you.
Go ahead, Miha.
So have you ever had the problem, if you've had the experience and the evidence to show that it's improved, have you done a client and then come back and then?
I haven't, it hasn't improved, I don't know. Same exact website and everything.
What were the results?
The only time, so last year I had one phishing test that did not work, and I was talking about this earlier. And basically this was a federal client, and they were under contract to have a different vendor every year. So we did not do their testing in previous years, but they had been doing phishing testing for lots of years before that, and they told us that up front, right? They said, we've been doing this for years. You know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We put some defenses in place. We just want to keep testing it, right? Because that's what you do. Like, you don't get this test, go out and buy $10,000 worth of equipment and install it, and then don't keep testing, right? You keep testing because I'll tell you that the difference between a 0 day in your organization is like 12 hours, right? I mean, like, you got to keep doing this testing.
That's just a job.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's just for the
that's
Java
just for
update.
Java, right? There's a new Java 0 day like every day now.
Yeah.
So the thing is that you got to keep testing this stuff. And so the one organization where I wasn't able to compromise had this testing, and then they had recommendations and they had implemented. Now I can't say whether the other companies doing the testing were good or not because I don't know, but obviously
Not as good as us though.
Obviously, all right. So obviously they were, because they went out and they got some technical controls and the equipment and they put it in place. And basically the thing that stopped me in the end was a Bluecoat proxy doing a custom binary SSL interception, not the default crap that the vendor gives you, but they had actually taken the time to have somebody come in and write a custom rule, differentiating from SSL HTTPS traffic, SSL binary traffic. They could tell the difference, they could look at certificates and all that kind of stuff. And so, although my email made it through the spam filter, I got past their IPS, I beat their AV, the users clicked the link, my payload never ever got out of the network, right? So that's the thing, is that I was stopped at one of those points. It was layered security.
So Martin ruined our 100% success rate.
I did. That killed our 100%. It did.
But yeah, now I can tell you that there's 2 companies where I've used this exact, so we've been using this scenario for like over a year. And we've used it, I know at 2 companies at least that I've used the exact same email, same methodology as far as, there might have been different people as far as email gathering.
Right.
But same exact email, same exact site, everything. Just as bad ponage the second year around.
There was one that Eric did 2 years ago and I did last year, and I used the exact same email and it still worked.
Well, I mean, you guys saw the email, it's pretty convincing, right? I mean, it looks legit, it sounds legit.
That's right.
We tried it. That whole layer of trust, right? It's all just about building the layer of trust, so when they see it, they're comfortable with it.
All right, I guess we're getting ready to get the axe. I guess we gotta go to the closing. There's the axe man over there. Thanks everybody for coming.